Hey everyone, I am live streaming testing again. Um, just a little bit of things going on here. I thank you for the subscribers who have subscribed so far to my channel. 26 subscribers, which is not a bad start to someone who's just, doing this as a hobby and some fun time. It's 80 degrees here in Western Pennsylvania. I think we have our Indian summer. I see the forecast for next week is going to be cooling down in the 50s and 40s. The leaves are falling down off the trees. And this is Indian summer, I believe. And we're coming into full swing model railroad season here. And the videos I've been posting have been older videos that I've taken over the past several years. You saw a HO scale crossing using IR sensors and an Arduino. You saw an N scale test loop with a block signal and a simulated railroad crossing. I used in the N scale, I used the Kato Unitrack crossing sensors that come with the an add-on kit. And since then, I have used smaller IR sensors and other things, and look for more videos from the vault of showing that and demoing that. This is stuff I've started with 5, 7, 8 years ago when I discovered microcontrollers of all types, not just Arduinos, different things. So look at the older videos that I'll be posting. I've also posted some of the older i80 videos showing some demonstrations of some of the members. Now, we used to go to several different layouts and operate. That's why it's called the PAI-80 operations group. We've gone to several noted layouts in the area. Larry Reynolds, Jim Herzog, Ken McCory, just to name a few. In our crew, we've usually had 8 to 10 members, and we would travel. Sometimes we travel 4 or 5 hours and go operate and stay the night at a hotel somewhere and then operate again. Very informal, nothing like ProRail, nothing like other affiliated groups with the NMRA and different things. There's several groups out there that do this, but there's Operations Roadshow and different other things too. But it's just a group of individuals who like going to other model railroads and operate here in the Pittsburgh area. Don Kassler, the late Don Kassler, B&O Railroad, operated on that, and several members of the Division II of the NMRA layouts that we've operated on. So look for more of those videos. When we go to these layouts, I'm usually the main videographer, take pictures and videos, and get a chance to talk with the layout owner and builder or several other people that have taken part in the person's layout. And then we have show and tell. As you noticed in a couple of the videos, just different items that people have scratch built, kit bashed, and modeled. You'll see a lot of people modeling things that they've saw or taken pictures of, and using materials that are readily available, and using materials that weren't readily available either, as you have seen in the first PAI-80 group show and tell. The late Mr. Rich Steiner built that storage bin from scratch built materials. And people have said many times that the model railroad hobby is dying. I have to refute that. The model railroad group is not dying. Most of the time, model railroaders get a bad name. They think we're middle-aged, 65, 75, 80 plus people who are bald and fat. Well, I'm bald. I'm on the husky side, and I got a beard. But I've been in model railroading ever since I was knee-high to a knee. I've always had trains around the Christmas tree growing up. Lionel trains, HO scale trains of different gauges and sizes, and anywhere from a 3x5 piece of board for a Z scale, N scale, up to 3 4x8 boards for the big Lionels. And if I can find some of the older videos of my father, who, as soon as he got one of those big VHS video cameras he bought from Sears, he recorded every single thing. He always had a video camera in his hand. I guess that's why I always have a video camera in my hand at one point or another. I got it from him. But if I can get some of those VHS converted to MPEGs, digital format, I will show some early on videos of some of my layouts when I was younger. And so it just goes to show you that you can be into model railroading at any age. I was always interested in model railroading and trains, period. We used to go to the local tourist line, the Oil Creek and Titusville Railroad, sometimes several times a year. I remember I went 3 different times in one summer. I took friends with me, and they were excited about that. And one of my friends today, who's out in Virginia, he dabbles into model railroading. But he would used to come over my house on the weekends growing up, and we were always troubleshooting trains in the basement. One night we stayed up until 3 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out how to get a snap switch to work in series with others. My dad was an industrial electrician, so I learned a lot about electronics and from him. And early days of block control, DC block control, when we created, even using the Lionel layout, he created a control panel, and I was able to control the switches with those levers and everything that old Lionels that had the red and green bulbs on them. And then when I progressed of getting into scale modeling, into HO scale, we tore down the Lionel set. Now, the Lionel still stayed out. They were on a lower level underneath the HO scale railroad. I had a few tiers. On the ground, I had G scale and Lego trains. And one tier up, I had a little 3x5 N scale layout. Then the main 4x8 turned into HO scale. And then on top of that 4x8, I had a loop of Lionel track and a couple other HO things there going back and forth. I think one was a trolley and one was a mine setup. But if I find those old VHS tapes and convert them to digital, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. One time, our local TV news, Channel 11 News, an affiliate of NBC, had I think it was before the Desert Storm War broke out, the Christmas before that, they were asking people to submit their all-time favorite Christmas videos of what they did for Christmas tradition. And my dad sent in a 10-minute tape of showing off the Lionel layout at the time, and it made a 10-second spot on Channel 11 News that night when they ran it. So that was pretty neat. We got the video clip from that. Other things I've done with model railroads. We went to my good friend growing up, Thomas Oleastri, who's no longer with us anymore, lived in the same town that I lived growing up. We belonged to Boy Scouts. We belonged to the local baseball team, Farm League, Little League, Pony League, and Boy Scouts. I think I mentioned that. And model railroading. He had a layout in his house. Him and his dad worked on that. And my dad and I worked on it. And sometimes we would work together, when he would come over and vice versa. Well, one year, we went to a local model railroad club that was in Freedom, PA. It's called the Beaver County Model Railroad and Historical Society. They're still in existence today. Then it was located in Freedom. It was located on a 3rd floor of an old bank building. Century Bank, I think it was called at the time. They closed down that location and moved to another location. They built a new branch, and they moved their headquarters over there. But they still had space in this bank building, and they rented out the top to the local model railroad club. And I joined when I was 12 years old. My friend was also the same age as me, and we went to one Christmas open house and saw the trains. And I was explaining to somebody else, another YouTube channel, that it was in a room. I think it was 20 by 20. You'd go in. It looked like an upside down W. It had a loop on one side. It had a middle peninsula and then another loop, and it was multi-level. And in one corner was a huge 8x8 helix. It was 8 levels, both of them were, and they were 3 tracks wide. And they had a 3-track main line. So basically everything was, you had trains going in different directions. And the beauty about this was not a DCC layout. It was block control. But when you watch the trains move on these 3 main lines, and you would watch them cross over into the yard on both sides, you swear it was DCC. That's how flawlessly this block control system worked. So we saw the trains running. We liked it. We went there a couple times during that Christmas open house season. And they weren't exactly looking for memberships. So my father inquired because there was a couple guys there that he retired with from the steel mill. And there was a mail carrier that was there that mom and dad knew. So he was comfortable enough to allow me to join the club. So he asked one of the members and said, sure, we don't have any young people here, so why not? We work and operate on Tuesday nights at 7:00. And once a month, the business meeting was held on a Saturday. So the next business meeting, we went, which was January. My friend and I came, and they had their business meeting. We were in the train room just sitting there, and my dad filled out some paperwork. And they voted and allowed us to be their first 2 junior members. And him and I both stayed members. We were 12 years old. We stayed members until we graduated high school. And then we became associate members. And then just things fell off. By the time we became associate members, the bank finally said, we're selling the building. Matter of fact, they were tearing the building down. And we had 3 months to vacate that entire layout. Well, something that those guys built starting in the 70s, and we came in at the early 90s. So you had 20 years almost of them building. I mean, the scenery was beautiful. I have old photographs. I believe I got to find those. I think I have some old VHS video that I can find and convert that. But it was a beautiful, beautiful layout. It was a fictitious name called the Union Atlantic Railroad. Beautiful, beautiful. And so we had 3 months to remove the layout. And we found another place at that time. It's in the old Monaca Railroad Station in Monaca, PA, right next to Phoenix Glass in Monaca. You can go to Google Earth. You can find it, type in, and you'll see it. The station has been there since who knows how long. In the basement of the building is the Monaca Rod and Gun Club. I like guns and firearms. What a better place to be? You have model railroading on top, and you've got the Rod and Gun Club in the basement. So they were losing members left and right, and they couldn't afford to keep the utilities on. So they owned the building, but they couldn't, pay the electric or the water and sewage and everything else the Monaca Borough was charging. So the Model Railroad Club, so ideally, and the entire floor was empty. So we were able to go in and store all the old stuff from the old building into the new location. And then I went to aviation school. My friend went off to college and stuff like that. So, and since then I have gone back a few years later. Now the layout there is completed, and some of the members are still there. A lot of them have passed on, but every year I go. I'm not sure if we're going to be open. They're going to be open during the COVID this year, but I'll find out. But I go in, they remember me, and now I'm taking my 12-year-old son. And those guys who saw me growing up as a 12-year-old have now seen my son, who's 12 years old, enjoying the hobby as well. So the hobby is not dying. There's different forms of the hobby. Going back to the bank building layout, yes, they had an early version of DCC. It was called the man-made system. And it was by a couple guys, brothers, whose their last name was Man. And they made a play on that, man-made. And they had decoders. They were huge decoders. Back in the early days of DCC, even going back to the 60s and 70s of the GE ASTRAC system, those decoders, or they called them receivers, because they weren't really decoders. They weren't really digital. They were more like analog, and they received analog pulses in the rail. And then the receiver would decode it. So they weren't officially decoders. They were huge things. And usually you ran them double-headed. two diesels, one dummy diesel because the things were so big you couldn't use the motor in that, and then a powered unit. And you would use the air hoses or drawbars there to connect the wires to make it to hide the wires. And if you had big steam locomotives that the motors weren't in the tenders, you can use the tender to hold the receiver. So early on of command control is when, back in the early 90s. It was my first exposure to that. And then secondly, when I got into command control was the Command Rail 2000, the Atlas Command Rail 2000, or Rail Command 2000, one of those systems. I have it around here somewhere. It came like a big box, almost about as big as a laptop. It had a sliding switch on, several buttons to program, a thick manual, and it also came with an Athearn locomotive. It was a Union Pacific locomotive. Not sure why everyone likes Union Pacific and Western Rails, but I'm an Eastern guy. No offense to anybody else. And it had a decoder in it, and it was a huge decoder. And I remember when I followed their instructions completely, step by step, and everything was going great. And it actually took the programming and everything, put it on the main track, and the wired throttle was pretty neat. It was about as big as an iPhone is now, but it had two real sliding sliders on it, and it had buttons for lights, and didn't have nothing for horn and bell because sound decoders weren't out then yet. So it was very limited. So I remember that the engine was going around and around and around, and then it stopped. Didn't do anything. I heard this buzzing noise like an analog locomotive would do on a DCC system. It was like bzzz, and it kept doing that. And then I saw smoke. And then I went over there, and the rear of the shell of that locomotive was soft. I think I still have that shell somewhere in my junk box. But the decoder melted itself and started melting the plastic of that locomotive. What's a 16-year-old going to do? Just leave it there and go chase girls and go drive your car? No. Of course, I gave it to my dad, and he called customer service, and then they sent a new decoder and another Athearn replacement locomotive. And how great can you get? Would those people do that today? I don't know. I've heard some stories when you send parts in to get fixed and you get them back, you plug them in, and the unit starts smoking again. So I don't know. But that was really neat because later on I learned how to fix stuff, having that guidance from my father. So I got two usable locomotives. So that was great. And things just progressed from there. And when you used the program track with that Command Rail 2000, they gave you a resistor to put between the command station and the track. And they also showed you instructions of how to wire up a toggle switch if you wanted to turn the power on and off, and so on. So that was my early exposure to DCC. And then progressing into other command control systems. Keller onboard system. I operated on a guy's layout. Our club also went to other people's layouts to operate then at the early times. And I got exposed to Keller onboard system and sound. The Keller onboard was still a version of analog DCC, but their receivers were getting smaller. No longer did you have to put a dummy locomotive with it to operate. And the early sound was very crude. The bell sounded like you took a tin cup and banged a spoon against it. But hey, wow, in a speaker in a locomotive, that was brilliant. You couldn't get much better than that at that time. So that was another command control system that I was exposed to. And then Dynatrol, from PSI. A lot of people were using Dynatrol, which was using early infrared receivers. They would be up along on the ceilings in different places in the room. So that was another system I operated on. And they had some infinite sound stuff too. That was on a guy's layout up in Erie, PA. That was another system I was exposed to. And then got exposed to Easy DCC, and then MRC Prodigy, and then Digitrax, what I use now, and NCE, and different ones. I've used a lot of them over the years, and I've got controllers from a lot of those systems as well. So that was my exposure from going from DCC, from DC block control to early command control, different things. Now, I must say, I've been on some nice layouts that have DC only, and you have a throttle, and some places you have a wireless throttle too. And the dispatcher is completely control of the trains. He gives you the power to that block. And some systems that I've operated on, you could never tell that they were not DCC. You had to obey your signals, because obviously if you crossed a red signal, you went to someone else's block, and it would create a short of some kind, or it would be dead because you did not have authority to be in that block because your signal was not green. So all the signals were tied to the blocks and the power. So if you had a red signal, obviously you couldn't go anywhere. If you got a green signal, you knew you had power. And some of those systems were you want to talk about, you go underneath someone's layout today and you see all kinds of wiring. Well, back in DC block control days, talk about triple or quadruple the amount of wiring that it took to run those layouts. But those guys back then pioneered what we have today. So without some of that old technology, we wouldn't have the advanced technology we have today. So talking about the pros and cons of DCC, which, number one, if you live in an area or you belong to a club in your area, or you've got friends who are modelers in your area, and you're getting into DCC, well, number one question is, what system do you want to use? Okay? I tell people when they ask me this question, because I program locomotives for side for friends, and I've done it for paid and different things. I always tell people, what are the systems are used by your local club that you want to belong to? If you want to go to a club, if you don't, that's fine. But what are your friends using? Are your friends using Digitrax? Are your friends using NCE? Are your friends using Easy DCC? And so on. So if you want to take your equipment and your controller to their house, that saves the host of that operating session, because some hosts may only have 3 or 4 controllers of that particular system. So if you have a Digitrax or NCE controller and they operate Digitrax or NCE, you have a controller you can use. This way, if someone does come to the layout and they don't have a controller, the host can give them one. So that's a plus. And so over the years, I've accumulated Digitrax, Easy DCC, NCE, MRC controllers, a couple of them each. So when I go to other people's layouts, I'm able to run on their system, or if somebody doesn't have a controller, I'm able to let them borrow the controller for that session. So if you move to an area and somebody's using NCE, and a lot of other layouts are using NCE, well, if you get an NCE system, then you know if you ever have a problem, you've got like friends that can help you troubleshoot. Unless you live in a remote area in the desert or wilderness somewhere, or somewhere not too far from civilization. So, you may not have a choice in that fact. But if you are with like-minded people, it's best to use the system that they used. So you can, if you have an issue, they can help you. Number 2, scale. Well, what scale do you prefer? Or in some cases, what's the space allow you? I hear people say, you know what? I have no room for layouts. I have no room for layout. Well, the common misconception for a lot of people is they see videos, DVDs, movies, YouTube, magazines, and people see large layouts. Well, if you've got the space, obviously you can have a large layout. If you don't have the space, that's not an excuse not to do modeling of some sort. You can get into hobby, wherever your strong points are. You can build kits. You can scratch build. You can kit bash. You can, have a small layout, Z scale, N scale, HO scale. It doesn't have to be a huge empire. There are a lot of people using T-track modules or N-track modules one of those little fold-up tables that you get at Target, Home Depot, and Lowe's. You can put Unitrack on it, Kato Unitrack, Bachmann Easy Track, Z scale, N scale, HO scale. All right. Or if you're a model and you just want to see some rungs, I mean, some of those tables you can still put a loop of Lionel track. The fast tracks that Lionel has is great to get started. Or if you have a room, if you want to do G scale, and when I was growing up, I turned my living room into a Christmas wonderland. There, we'd have a big tree in front of the big picture window. And I had 3 G scale loops that my gracious mother allowed me to put up because it wasn't a big house. The living room was the biggest room in the house outside of the basement that I took over later. But for Christmas, I put 3 loops of G scale track. The center loop was a trolley. The middle loop was a freight train. And the outer loop was the Bachmann Big Hauler Royal Blue B&O. That had 3 passenger cars, a tender, and a steam locomotive, which had sound and smoke. So the 2 trains had smoke and sound, and the trolley didn't. But, you turn those trains on, you can see a plume of smoke in the center of the living room go up circular with that smoke. But, so when someone says they don't have room for a layout or they don't have room to run trains, I don't believe that. You have room for a layout anyway, even if it's a shelf layout. Model Railroader has several books. One is layouts for small spaces, and they have a couple different books on that. So go to KalmbachHobbyStore.com and search for those books. So any place that I mention to get stuff from, no, they're not my sponsors. I'm not being paid to do or mention their names. I'm just a model railroader. I'm sharing resources that I've used over the years. So I bought from Train World. I bought from Iron Horse Hobbies. Iron Planets. What are the one? I know Iron Horse used to be in Pittsburgh, I do believe. A.B. Charles, which used to be in Pittsburgh. I used to go there and buy. When I go down to Virginia to visit in-laws down there, there is a place called J&J Trains, not too far from the Martinsville Speedway. So wherever I go in my travels, which since the virus, I haven't been doing much. But when I go on my travels, I stop and try to find on Google or Google Maps now, hobby shops, local hobby shops. And I go there. Yes, they may be high priced than what I'm normally used to spending, because sometimes I try and get stuff, at wholesale, or I buy from eBay, or, my good friends who can get stuff at very discounted costs. But I will go when I'm out of state and buy something from that local hobby shop to support them. Because if you guys have noticed, over the past at least 10 years, a lot of your major hobby shops have closed their doors. Model Railroad Post Office up in New York closed. They used to be a big Long Island Drugs. They used to not just sell drugs, but they were also a hobby shop. They were listed in magazines. A lot of those advertisers that used to see the Standard Hobbies, I do believe, was another one in New York that closed their doors. So a lot of these big places that you've seen in the magazines have closed for a number of reasons, because people are buying online. We're not going to brick and mortar stores anymore. You go in there and their prices may not be discounted, but they have to keep the lights on. They have to pay their employees. So, I've heard people say, well, your price for a locomotive is $175, but I can get it from the catalog for $100 or online for $75. Okay, I'm all for saving a buck. But these hobby shop guys who have done it for decades, that's their bread and butter. If we don't purchase from them or patron them, then they're going to have to be forced to close their doors. Some of them have closed their doors and went strictly online, and some of them have just closed, period. So we need to support our local hobbyists as much as we can. There was another guy. It was in, I believe, South Carolina or North Carolina that I used to get a lot of my electronics parts from. He recently closed down. It was for another reason. It was for health reasons, but he was open for 20 plus years. And I got all my toggle switches, my terminal strips, my wire. LED-switch.com, I believe, is his website. And I believe he's still open just to liquidate his inventory. So go to LED-switch.com or go on Google and look him up. If he's still open, please try and get some electronics parts that he has left there. So not only can you support him, but you can get discount electronics. Matter of fact, the stuff I was purchasing from him was even cheaper than eBay and Amazon. So yes, there are places that are cheaper than eBay and Amazon. Not saying those places are bad, because I get a lot of stuff from them, all right, that you can't find other places. But if I find a place and I know they have my items that I need, and his shipping down there was, if I put an order at Friday afternoon, he 2-day priority to mail, and I'd have it by Tuesday or Wednesday that week. Or if I order on a Monday, I had it by Wednesday or Thursday. You know, that's how quick his turnaround runs. And there's some other places too that are quick turnaround as well, because they want to clear their shelves and they want to make you as a customer, satisfied. Okay. And we need to do that more and more. So in this online day and age, find a lot of these outlets online and support them. So a couple other things too. A lot of people have said stuff about clubs that they don't want to join a club because there's politics. There's politics everywhere you go. I don't care if it's at the NMRA level, the headquartered level, the district or regional level. I don't care what club. You can belong to the Fishermen's Association, the NRA, whatever association. There's a politics everywhere. There's one club that I know of that doesn't have meetings. They don't even have a president. They show up. They do their work. There's a common consensus of what needs to be done, but there's no politics. I know not every place can do that because you have egos that get in the way. There are some clubs where they didn't let certain people build buildings and put them on the layout. Or if someone did do something, once that person left, they would rip it out and put something else there. And when the person came back, they'd be upset because what they did, quote, wasn't good enough for their standards. And we don't need that in a club setting. We really don't, because that deters from the club or the organization that you belong to. If you don't have a certain guideline or certain things to go by. I belong to the Clarion Model Rower Club. Very informal. Matter of fact, some of the future videos that I'll be posting here shortly is from the Clarion Model Rower Club. You'll see the members engaged in different activities, from the in-club hobby shop to somebody running the vacuum cleaner, to people running trains, people cooking food there. Because when we have different things during Christmas season and different other open houses, everybody brings in food. Who doesn't get hungry, right? But anyway, a lot of people engaging in different activities to keep the club going. And that's what you need, okay? Clubs aren't dictatorships. Clubs aren't supposed to be clique-oriented, but on some occasions, it does happen. And, if you don't feel comfortable in that club setting, just quietly leave and go somewhere else. Because sometimes in those settings, you've got a view, and a lot of people have that view in one way or another, and you won't be able to change that no matter how hard you try. But, if you're not getting involved or not letting you be involved, find another club, because there is a club setting out there that fits your needs or your perspective. And then get involved. Many clubs have different membership levels. Excuse me. Be it full-time member with a key, an associate member without a key, family membership to bring the whole family in and whatnot. So there's different levels of memberships in all these different clubs that are around the United States, Canada, and the world, period. So get involved and get involved as much as you can. And because that'll show the club, the other members in the club, that you want to be involved, that you want to take on responsibility, and then they can rely on you for different things. If you show up and be a club member and don't participate, well, you have no one to blame but yourself if you don't get involved. And it's the same thing with the NMRA. I know a lot of people have badmouthed the NMRA and what's in it for me on the NMRA. Look, I've been an NMRA member since, I think, 2000, 2001. I'm not sure. And I belong to my local division, which is Division 2, which is the Pittsburgh division. And I've attended their meetings in the past. I've attended their club open houses in the past. And I get their monthly newsletter. And I participate in their activities. All right? But you only get in what you put in, or I should say you only get out what you put in. Are there some people there who think that they're better than anyone else because they've been published in magazines and been noted on a national level? Yeah, there's some egos that happen like that. I'm not saying there isn't, because they are. All right. I've heard stories of people going to regional divisions and different things, and no one reached out to them and made them feel like they were welcome, and they, didn't take part of that region, but they still kept their NMRA membership on the national level. On a national level, you still can participate on different things. Go to the national train shows and conventions in your area and different things. Have I ever been to a national? No, I have not. Either my job has kept me from going, or in some case, the price, at different places, because it can get a bit pricey, the week-long hotels and different things. And plus, I have a young family, so being away a week or whatnot on that would be tough, especially since the kids were a bit younger a few years ago. Maybe when they're older, maybe we might make a family vacation out of it. So who knows? The opportunities are wide open for that. So no, I have not been to a national convention. I have been to regionals and conventions and my own divisional conventions and taken part in different things there. So, I have taken apart those, but it's not for everyone. So it's to each his own. I tell them, people, am I going to dislike you? No, everybody has an opinion. Am I going to not like you if you don't become a member of the NMRA? Am I one of those guys who want to shove memberships down people's throats? No, personally, I'm not like that. I'll just tell people when they ask, why are you a member of the NMRA? And I'll give them my honest opinion. I'll give them the likes and dislikes. The one thing that I will say about being on the national level is many years ago, the NMRA had a section of the old website called the Pike Registry. And what it was is you would send them in I think it was like $10 or $15 at the time, and they would register your Pike's name, your railroad name. So under the old Pike registry system, and they would send you a certificate or whatever with your railroad's name on it and your Pike number and so on, basically stating that no one else could, quote, take your name. And mine was the Pittsburgh and Ohio Railroad, which as a 12-year-old, I came up with that name. And, you can go to my website at pittsburghandohiorailroad.com, or the short version, P as in Paul, N as in Nancy, O as in Oscar, R as in Robert.com, PNORR.com. You'll see a very early version of the website. I'm in the process of redoing it. I also have a Groups.io account, which is PNORR@Groups.io. You can become a member there as well. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, Scott Eric Catalano. Hit the subscribe button, the like, button as well, and the bell icon if you want to be notified of more videos. But I'm not a big heavy hitter on saying that each video. Some people are, some people aren't. One person asked me, well, why don't you put some videos up? And I did. I did it on my website, actually, and I gave them private links to the website to view the videos. I wasn't really putting my stuff out there. And I blame Tom Kvichak of Tom's Trains and Things, shameless plug, and Humanity City or Human City or whatever up there in New York, another shameless plug, for him as well. So they said, put videos up. So I am putting videos up, older ones, slowly. So, and I test out live stream, and I'm testing out this live stream too. You don't see my full bald head as I did in the other video. Also, too, in the videos section here, there's also Tony Coaster's famous nickel plate third subdivision railroad that it's currently finished now. That video is about 8 to 10 years old, but it's a rare look at a famous model railroader's layout as a work in progress. And you don't see these vantage points from a lot of famous model railroaders there. So he shows you an entire tour of the layout. He shows finished and unfinished sections. He's shown different scenery techniques and other little neat things that he's done on his layout for operation. And he's heavy into operations. So that's Tony Coaster's nickel plate layout. You'll see other railroads featured soon here. Ken McCory's layout, Larry Reynolds's layout. All fellow modelers who have shared their and opened their layouts to people to come and operate. And you'll see different aspects of their layout as well. You'll see some videos of a I-80 group train that we've taken to different people's layouts, which consists of a passenger car from everyone who has a layout and their private railroad name on there. And with layout owner's permission, we have operated these trains on their respective layouts. Ken McCory's layout, Larry Reynolds's, Jim Herzog's, and a few other ones as well. So that is just things that are coming up here in the future here. I don't have any schedules planned of when a video is coming out. When a video is posted is when a video is posted. I know a lot of people have beginnings and endings of videos. I may work on that. I'm not too up on that kind of stuff. If somebody is out there and they want to help design a beginning and an entrance to different videos, I am all ears on that. And because stuff we share with each other. You know, my strong point is not graphical design. Somebody else's strong point is graphical design, just like model railroading. Somebody might be great on building bench work. All right. Somebody maybe else maybe good at artistry, painting backdrops. I'm not. I'm lucky I can make a stick figure. But, you know, wiring and electronics, I love doing that. Teaching people how to do new things. I'm good at doing that. So this also is a hobby that we can share with each other. So if you have a strong point, you may help somebody else who may be not as strong in that area. All right. I know a lot of us, since we're all stuck indoors because of this virus situation, and a lot of clubs aren't open. But that's another advantage of being in a club or being around people who have that is going to. We have a round robin group. We go to each person's layout, and if it's project night, you know, we ask the layout owner, "What project do you need work on tonight?" At a friend's house, I was a guy who went around. For some reason, this guy thought that I built bridges good. I built a bridge. You know, I just put kits together. Then I painted it black, and then I got good old brown spray paint, and I spray painted it lightly outside. And I brought it to his house one day, and I stuck it in where he wanted. And he goes, "Scott, that's a beautiful bridge. You painted it great. It looks great. I couldn't do it." Okay. So on that layout, I'm a bridge builder. You know, I'm not a rivet counter. I don't care how many rivets are in that bridge or are supposed to be. He gives me a bridge. He says, "Put it together, install it." So I do. And I paint it black and I lightly rust it. That's all I do. Nothing special. So you might be a kit builder. You know, there's a lot of people that don't like building buildings. So somebody may, you know, like to build you some buildings. You know, give them free cookies or something there. You know, you may have somebody who loves to do carpentry work. I know a guy, he's a carpenter. He's a good woods craftsman, and he builds cabinets for electronics for people. He built this nice cabinet for another layout we visit. His DCC system in there, his electronics are in there. There's nice fans in there to keep things cooled down, you know. So he built cabinets. And so other guys have seen this. So, there's different things. So whatever you're not good at, reach out to the model railroad community, because there's somebody out there, and it doesn't matter what state or country you live in. If there's a delivery service, now I've been doing it a lot back and forth. People have sent me stuff to either install decoders or reprogram or just build, period. So I've been doing a lot of stuff in the downtime. So, there's different areas. So when hey, like I said, you have to ask. In order to do something, you have to ask. If you got a question, we'll try and answer it, or find somebody who will try and answer it. When I was working on the railroad as a train service employee, the supervisors, the yard masters, and the company policy straight across was, if you've got a question, and if we don't get back to you in 24 hours with an answer, it was 24 hours. Well, or whenever they saw you the next time, give or take. But they always had an answer. Sometimes it might not have been the answer that you were looking for, but they did give you an answer. So, and that's a plus. So you've got questions, somebody will have the answer, right? And in model railroading, there are many answers to one question. There are a lot of variables. My dad used to tell me, Scott, go do something. This is my end result that I want. But as long as he got the end result, he really didn't care what process I used to get there. And, being a hard-headed Italian that I am, I always took the hard way to get something done. There's a saying that says, work smarter, not harder. Well, I was the one that was always working harder to try to get the same outcome. So there's different ways to get things done. If you feel comfortable of getting the same result, doing it a different way, by all means do it. And no one should criticize you for doing that. And if they do, then they themselves are afraid to tackle that same task because they're afraid they might mess up. Yeah, no matter what it is, model railroading, anything, shipbuilding. I'll give you a good story. I used to go to friends of mine's. I like model airplanes. I went to school for aviation. September 11th killed my career. 3 months later, I got hired on the railroad. When I've got more time, I'll share that story. But being planes, I like planes. I was getting into radio control planes. So a friend of my dad's, a couple towns over, has big farmland. And he turned about 10 acres on his corner of his farmland into a model aviation club, which is neat. They had a control tower, everything. Those guys got serious. And you thought model railroad guys and gals got serious in model railroad operations? Check out a model airplane club. Those guys get really into it like we model railroaders do. So you show up. This one guy showed up with his big pickup truck. He had 2 or 3 planes in the back. I remember it was a FedEx and a UPS L1011. Nice planes. Nice planes in real life too, but nice planes in the models because they worked just as good, if not sometimes better, than the real ones. So anyways, a beautiful, nice VFR day, which means there's no cloud in the sky. You had the air traffic controller over there getting ready, and everybody had their call signs. They used the tail numbers just like we do in real life. We all had radio headsets to communicate with, and the field was turned into miniature runway and taxiway. And it even had lights at nighttime. All right, so we're there. This guy gets his FedEx plane. He's fueling it up. He's testing it out, and he's taxiing down the runway there, just like a real plane. And he gets the okay to take off, and he takes off. He took off really nice, really good. All right, and he's flying, and then I hear him say he's beating his controller. He goes, I lost control. I don't have control of this plane. And I'm like, I'm standing by my dad's friend there just watching this FedEx plane, still flying, but then it got out of range, and then it was sputtering because it wasn't getting the correct commands from the remote control system, and it took a nosedive. I mean, it took a nosedive. It went right down. Pew! It went into a pile of toothpicks is what it looked like. I was like, oh my goodness, what's this guy going to think? So he goes over there with the bucket. He's quiet. He puts all these parts in his bucket, goes over and puts in the back of his pickup truck, and unboxes the UPS L1011. I looked at him and said, how many hours you put into it? Oh, I was a couple years working that plane. And he started laughing. And meanwhile, I'm like shocked. He opens up the box. He goes, that's why you always bring a spare. That's why he always bring a spare. So, he went and started flying the UPS. I asked him later on how much money he had tied up in that FedEx L1011. He goes, electronics, wood, and everything else, about $3,000. I'm thinking $3,000. Now it's in a pile of toothpicks in a bucket in the back of his truck. Well, that's like some of us with our model railroad stuff. These locomotives, creeping up to $300, $400, $500. They've got all the nice bells and whistles, literally. The flashing ditch lights, all the interior lights, the cab lights, the exterior lights, so on and so forth. All right. So when you're running this around the layout, and then something happens, it derails and falls to the floor, how do you feel when that happens? I'd like to feel like that guy with the L1011 that, fell, went into a million pieces. Because if we have that sort of an attitude to things that happen, because things will happen. And will things happen to expensive pieces of equipment? Yes. That's inevitable. It will happen, whether by your fault or someone else's fault accidentally. Because no one's really out there, visiting other people's layouts. Even clubs at Christmas times and shows. Things happen. Unfortunately, I went to a Christmas show one time, open house, and something like that sort of did happen. And a club member came out and started yelling profusely at this, visitor. It might have been an accident. It's not like you're going to some place like that and deliberately knocking things off the rails. Or since then, a lot of clubs have put up, barriers and no touch signs. But, things are going to happen. So if you don't want your stuff like that, something like that happen to your stuff, then don't run it, or run it when the show isn't happening or something. So I understand that. That's fine. But things will happen. But you don't take it out in public. And to my knowledge, I don't think that member was there much longer. I think the club unanimously kicked him out. But you don't go off on complete strangers. Because who knows? Maybe they were there to try to get into the hobby. See, that's the thing, too, that I have as Tom goes, did somebody say rant? I can rant about things, too. But if you outburst like that in public, that's going to deter anybody. Whether they even wanted to join a club or not, deter anybody from getting into any kind of a hobby. If you're yelling at them in public, yeah, accidents do happen. You got to take that into consideration. That will happen. Okay. But there's a right way and a wrong way to handle situations like that. And that was a wrong way. I have several stories like that too. I had an SB Daylight Vistadome. My favorite train is an SB Daylight. I've seen pictures of the SB Daylight in videos, magazines. That's the only Western road that I like, is the SB Daylight, because of the colors of the cars, the colors of the steam train. And, later on, that same steam engine turned into become the Freedom Train engine, and then they painted it back to SB Daylight colors. But I had 24 cars. It was an Athearn, blue box Athearn. You put them all together. Had an observation, 3 coaches, a diner, RPO, a couple baggages, 3 Vistadomes. I had the ABBA all-powered superweight DC Athearn locomotives. And then later on, when Bachmann came out with their first run of the SB Daylight steam locomotion that had smoke, I got that. But anyway, was running it during one of the club's Christmas's open houses. It was running. And my friend and I and my father and somebody else closed up for the night. It was our turn to close up. I came back 8 o'clock the next morning on a Saturday. This was a Friday night, and I came back Saturday morning. And ran all day with the trains and everything like that. The next day, was Sunday. The open house did start at 10 o'clock, but my family and I go to church on Sunday, so I was at church, and I came in to take over the afternoon shift for the open house. I got there, my tongue went into my throat went into my stomach. I just had that bad feeling when I saw my train. My train was in a staging yard. Each one of there was enough staging yards that each club member who was running a train had their own staging track assigned to them. And one of the Vista Domes, and was really weird. One of the Vista Domes was smashed. Looks like somebody dropped something on it. All the plastic black lines on the Vista Dome there was crushed in. It looked like someone dropped something on it. It didn't look like someone dropped it on the floor. But the crazy thing about it looks like somebody dropped it, but the staging tracks were about a half an inch apart from, actually an inch apart from center line. So there's multiple staging tracks, and my train was in the middle, and nothing else was knocked off the track. So if something fell on it, then obviously you would have had other derailed cars and stuff like that. But it was crazy. It looks like something happened. Somebody replaced, put all the cars back on the track, and my Vista Dome car was still in its proper place and still coupled to everything. And those Athearn blue box kits I used to put together with Tester super glue, and that Tester super glue would keep everything. So something with a very good force fell on it, had to have really done some damage. But I brought it to my dad's attention, and my dad brought it to the president of the club's attention. And before the train show ended that night, after the public went away, the president asked those members who were there, which were about 15 of them, said, honestly, who had an accident? We aren't going to throw you out. We're not going to discipline you. We just want to know who destroyed this young man's train car, that he left here to run the train, because we need to respect his stuff like he respects our stuff, and like we respect everybody else's stuff that's sitting here and taking part. Well, that was a week before Christmas, the weekend before Christmas. They didn't have anything during the week of Christmas. After Christmas, we had another week, and then New Year's, and the show was done. Nobody came forward. And believe it or not, to this day, I'm 41. To this day, I still don't know who did that. And that person probably passed on by now, or that person is in another state. I don't know, because there's only a handful of members still left in that club currently today. So, if you've done something to someone's stuff, no matter if it's planes, trains, whatever it is, especially in a club setting, or if you have a round robin group, be upfront and honest. Because if you're upfront and honest, and we should practice this every day, not just in club settings. If you're upfront and honest and say, you know what, Scott, Tom, Dave, whoever, I was running your train, or you let me borrow this or something. I broke this. I'm letting you know. And what can I do to fix it? Either replace it if it's a model that you can buy again. If it's something that was kit bash or scratch built, not so much. But you try and do everything you can to remedy that issue. Because not only will that person have more respect for you, you guys might become best friends. Who knows? But if you're upfront and honest in this hobby, then no matter what hobby it is, railroading, aviation, whatnot, if you're upfront and honest, people will treat you with more respect. And you might gain a great friend for the rest of your life. So, I know I've rambled on here a lot tonight, but I'm just testing out different things and giving you guys a heads up of what might be coming here in the future. November, I hopefully will maybe do a live decal, not decal, Heath. It's decals, a live decal session using CMR Products decals, using microscale decals. I will show you what I do to prepare the decal and how to prepare the car to do decals. There's different ways. Everybody might have different processes they do, and Pardon me, there's phone ringing. I should have put that on mute, but oh well. Blooper. But another episode, I will try and do some live weathering, if not a video on weathering. There's different ways of weathering. I like spray cans myself, pan pastels with rubber sponges, and makeup. If you have a girlfriend, wife, fiance, or anybody in your family that has makeup, see if you can go borrow some of their makeup and and tell them that you're doing it. But you know what? I found a lot of stuff going into Joann's, Michael's, or even the beauty store. Getting makeup sponges and brushes, and it's a different way of doing things with makeup. It's like on the pan pastel type thing. But I was in drama in high school and applied makeup, so I have some idea. But that's an unconventional way of weathering as well. Hopefully, I'll be going through some structures as well. I might review some structures or take a structure and make it look like something that wasn't in that kit to begin with. Because if you see a kit that may say house on it, you might be able to make a train depot. Because if you go around and look at a lot of the older pictures in the 40s, 50s, and 60s when they still had depots and flagstaffs and stuff like that, they weren't nothing than a modified. Who wants to hear a phone call? No more than a modified house, because the station agent back in those days used to live in those places. So that's another thing. We'll demonstrate some electronics there. Arduinos. Yeah, I know there's a lot of stuff out there on railroad crossings and signals using Arduinos and stuff like that. A lot of it's going to see the stuff in action. I like to show things first and then almost reverse engineer and show you how it can be accomplished. I'll give you a quick demonstration. I went to an N-Scale convention show last year at Altoona, and there was a fellow model railroader. He was from Michigan. His name is William Selleck. And yes, he is a distant cousin of Tom Selleck. We got into that whole discussion. But anyway, that's a story for a different time. He just bought the Just Plug light system from Woodland Scenics. His whole and total system almost cost him $200. And he saw the stuff I had on another table of demonstrating light effects, crossings, and HO and N-Scale. And he was, intrigued. He says, "Can I use the same stuff here that you do?" I says, "Yeah." So disconnected his entire Just Plug system. I programmed a microcontroller. It doesn't have to be an Arduino specifically. It was a microchip. Let's put it to you that way. That because you can program those microchips, you can place them anywhere that you want to. It doesn't have to be an Arduino. It doesn't have to be a Adafruit Metro. It doesn't have to be an off-brand Chinese thing. As long as you know how to program a microchip, you're good to go. But anyway, I had a breadboard, I had a microchip, and I had connectors. So I bootloaded a basic light sequence system onto the microchip and used a breadboard and connected his lights, and used the same timer as the Just Plug system, used the same lighting effects as the Just Plug system, and he was blown away. And it took up less real estate underneath his module, his N-Scale module. They weren't T-tracks, they were actually N-track. He put everything up on legs and everything else. So he was fascinated by that, and then he said, "Well, can you design me a crossing system?" I said, "Yeah. I'll use your modules to test out stuff that I'm designing for another person." So I sent him in the mail two IR receivers, a microcontroller, and cables, because he has no idea about electronics at all. But I gave him detailed instructions and even drew out crudely hand-drawn diagram. And I gave him color-coded cables. That they only plugged in a certain way. This way, you can't mess up color-coded cables, although I know if it's Heath doing it, he just might. But Heath, if you're watching, just poking a little fun at you. But anyway, explicit instructions to do it. And the next time I saw him at another show the next year, he had the lighting in place, and he had the crossings in place based on his needs. His crossing, he had 2 tracks going into one. He wanted one way of the crossing to be timed a certain way while he was switching industries. So if he pulled up to the crossing, the flashers would go off. Go off as in go on. And then when the train went the other way and didn't actually cross the crossing, the lights would go off at a certain time delay. And then if the train wanted to go across the crossing, it would. Same thing with the other track. The other track was a passenger station. So when the passenger train came up to the station, he hit a sensor there and the station lights came on. And the station announcer welcomed the train. Yes, I do sound stuff like that for people as well. So the train sat there. Well, that also triggered the crossing. But the crossing timed out because the passenger train stayed there longer, so the crossing lights went off. And then when the train started to move, the crossing lights came back on, the train went. So different things like that. I do custom do stuff like that for people. Because, yeah, you can buy commercially available products, and some of them, and I tried those, I have those, and some of them did not appeal to me or do what I wanted to do, because I didn't want, for example, the crossing to be connected to the DCC system. I didn't want the crossing to be connected to Jammer-i. I wanted it to be completely independent of itself. And the only way to do that was programming it myself with a microcontroller. So same thing with block signals. I've been doing block signals using current sensing and IRs. Now, I don't use commercially available current sensors because they're expensive. The BD120s and other companies, they're $15 to $18 a piece. And I inquired one time, if I order multiples from you, can I get a discount? And the guy on the phone was like, no. Well, I've gotten current sensors from Amazon and eBay for pennies on the dollar. Yeah, you have to program them, but you can do that using the microcontroller. Or you can tell me how many blocks you have on your layout. I'll program all the stuff for you. And then all you have to do is hook it up. I'm looking for testers. I'm looking for guinea pigs to test this kind of stuff. So drop me a line, place a comment on the YouTube comments below, send me an email. My email is Scott, SCOTT, .catalano, CATALANO, @gmail.com. Throw me your ideas. I'll put them together and test them. We'll put them up here on YouTube so people can look at them. So, I'm not here because, to keep everything for myself. I want to, work with you guys so you can enjoy your hobby just as much as I do, more and more every single day. So there's different ways. I've given these IR sensors and current sensing. You'll see one of the videos that I will post here. It's a DC. The signals, the block signals, and the crossing on DC. And the same works with DCC. That's why I make the electronic stuff the way I do, so you can use it for DC or DCC, and you don't have to spend much money getting certain things to work or worried about things frying if you hook it up wrong. So a lot of the electronics that are out there on the market that I have found and tested and used, they weren't simple. They either had 4 or 5 pages of manuals or complicated diagrams. And, if something smoked, customer service wasn't always too helpful. That's not for everybody. I understand that. But I'm just relating my experiences. And I've learned. Just like the first time I took my car to the mechanic and he gave me a $600 bill for changing brakes and rotors on a car, I said that was it. I did all my car work myself, and I still do all my car work. Outside of body work, I don't do body work, but if it's brakes, it's oil, it's electronics, it's, control arms, ball joints, I've collected all the tools over the years for different many vehicles, makes and models that I have that I can fix practically anything. A GM, a Ford, some foreign cars. So I've got the tools because anytime I got into a project, I had to go out and buy the tools. And, because if it broke once, it's going to break again. I also have the fancy scan tools too. Not the $5,000 ones that can do everything with your car, but just enough to get myself into trouble or out of trouble, whichever one you want to think of. But so I want to help you guys as much. We can all learn from this hobby. So that's what I'm here for. So drop me a comment, send me an email, visit the website, like the videos, do what you need, and give me some ideas and suggestions. And I will do my best to do it. And, as I watch other people's YouTube channels and seeing what they're doing, hey, I've been missing out for a while, but I'll have my own take on different things and so on. So, I went very long-winded. That's probably because I'm Italian. I talk too much. If I sit on my hands, I go mute. Bad jokes too. The king of bad jokes. But anyway, so a rant. I got an Amazon rant. Heath a while ago gave me links to stuff on Amazon for earbuds, microphone, webcam, and different things. All right, so I did order that stuff, and never came. Whatever reason, it did say the shipment was a week late, so I wanted less boxes in my shipment, so I chose that option. So, going on 2 weeks. Well, I have life I deal with every day, so I wasn't too particularly, in a hurry for it. Yeah, but when the third week came around, I'm getting kind of concerned because you look at the bank statement, I've been charged for these items, and my items haven't been here. So I called Amazon, and I said, here's my order number. Where is my packages or package, my items? And they said, yes, Scott, we saw that you ordered this in such and such day. And I said, I've been charged. Well, they said they had to investigate it. Now, when I don't know if you guys have issues with customer service sometimes, but I go until I get an English speaking person because I'm just that way. I want an English person that can understand me and I can understand them. So I had to call Amazon a couple different times to get someone to talk to. And the good thing, it was a supervisor in logistics, and we were able to track, it was at the local distribution center, which is only 3 towns over from me. I said, well, can I go pick it up if it's there? They go, no, sir, we don't do that. If we have our own delivery drivers doing that, you can't show up at the distribution center. I wasn't going to tell them where I knew exactly where it was. But anyway, so I just let them do what they wanted to do. I didn't hear from them for another week. And what is it now? We're going to the last week of October. Well, needless to say, I don't have those items yet. All right. And they have not tracked the items down yet. They're still saying it's at the distribution center. I said, it's fine. You've got my information. Find it. If you lost it or damaged it, I'd like to know one way or another, because if you're not going to remedy this situation, I will go to my bank and get those charges and refute those charges. And then you'll have to refund the money. I've talked to people who've done stuff like that. It almost took another month for some people to get their money actually refunded. So here's a tip. Don't use Amazon delivery. Try and get FedEx, UPS, or USPS. At least you might get your goods. You might get a damaged box, but at least you'll get something and have some proof that something happened to your packages so you can refute it and file the insurance claim on it or whatnot. But for someone to take your money and still say your items are here, but you can't find them and not give you an explanation, then that's a different story altogether. But that's my Amazon rant. But other than that, I've been a completely satisfied Amazon customer, just like other places too. You'll have things that will happen like that, but you take one day at a time. All right, guys, I'm done for tonight. I don't know how long I've been on here, but it's long enough. All right, so again, drop me a comment, drop me an email of the things you would like to see me tackle. Because if my lights go out here or if your lights go out there, something went wrong. But okay, have a good night, guys. Bye.